The street was packed, the usual city noise humming in the background, when suddenly, all eyes turned to one heated exchange. A middle-aged woman, frustration etched on her face, pointed a finger at a black man and spat out the words, "Go back to Africa." Gasps rippled through the crowd. People paused mid-step, their conversations falling silent. The man, calm, composed, locked eyes with her. But instead of anger, something else flickered in his expression. For a moment, the tension was unbearable. Was he going to lash out? Walk away? The woman stood firm, arms crossed, waiting for a fight. But what happened next caught everyone, including her, completely off guard. His response was so powerful, so unexpected, that the entire crowd stood frozen. And then something incredible happened. Stay tuned, because this is one moment you won't want to miss. The crowd held its breath, waiting for his reaction. The man, tall and confident, tilted his head slightly, studying the woman as if trying to understand where her anger came from. He didn't yell. He didn't insult her back. Instead, a small, knowing smile played at the corner of his lips. The woman shifted uncomfortably, as if she hadn't expected anything but rage. People around them whispered. Some pulled out their phones, recording every second. Others looked uneasy, unsure if they should step in. The city's usual rhythm, cars honking, distant laughter, the hum of conversations, faded into the background. Who was this man? Why was he so calm? And why did it feel like he was about to say something that would change everything? The woman, still defensive, opened her mouth to speak again, but before she could, he finally took a step forward. His words, when they came, left everyone hanging on the edge. The man took a slow breath, his gaze steady. "Africa," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Do you even know where your ancestors came from?" The question hung in the air, thick with meaning. The woman blinked, caught off guard. She had expected anger, a heated exchange, but not this. The crowd murmured, shifting closer, sensing something deeper unfolding. A young woman near the front whispered to her friend, "He's got a point." An older man folded his arms, watching closely. A teenager recording on his phone zoomed in, knowing this moment was about to go viral. The woman scoffed, shaking her head, but there was hesitation in her eyes now. "This is my country," she muttered, but her voice lacked the same sharpness. The man took another step forward, his expression unreadable. "You ever wonder how we all got here?" he asked. And just like that, the tension in the air grew even heavier. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't look away. The crowd had grown, their attention locked on the man who now stood firm, his presence unshaken. His words weren't loud, but they carried weight. "You talk about this country like it belongs to you alone," he said, his voice steady. But history tells a different story. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. A man in a business suit frowned, arms crossed. A mother with her child on her hip watched with quiet intensity. Even a group of teenagers, normally distracted by their phones, seemed glued to the moment. The woman's hands balled into fists at her sides. "I know my history," she shot back. "I was born here. My family built this country." The man nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting that answer. Then, with a quiet certainty that sent chills through the air, he said, "So did mine." Silence. The weight of those 3 words settled over the street like a storm cloud about to break. The woman's face twitched, as if his words had struck something deeper than she wanted to admit. The crowd waited, hanging on to every second of silence. Then she laughed, a short, forced sound. "Oh, please," she scoffed, shaking her head. "That's not the same." But the man didn't flinch. He took another step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Isn't it?" he asked. "Who do you think built the roads, the buildings, the economy that gave your family a future here?" His voice remained calm, but there was something unshakable in it. "My ancestors' hands shaped this country just as much as yours did. Maybe more." A man in the crowd, older, his face lined with years of experience, suddenly spoke up. "He's right," he muttered. Heads turned toward him. His voice was quiet, but the weight of his words sent a ripple through the gathering. The woman faltered. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in her eyes. The crowd was no longer just watching. They were involved now. And just when it seemed like the tension couldn't rise any higher, the man said something that made the entire street hold its breath. The street felt electric, every breath held, every eye locked on the man and the woman. She opened her mouth to argue, to push back, but something in his steady gaze stopped her. The weight of history, of truth, pressed between them. Then he spoke again, his voice softer now, but just as powerful. "You tell me to go back," he said, "but I never left. My ancestors never had a choice. They were taken, stolen, forced to build a country that still tells us we don't belong." His words hung in the air, undeniable. The woman's face twitched, her bravado cracking. The older man in the crowd nodded. Others murmured in agreement. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of realization. Then, just when it seemed like the moment was settling, the man took one last step forward. "But if you really believe some people don't belong here," he said, tilting his head slightly, "then tell me, where are you from?" The woman's breath caught. For the first time she had no answer. And the crowd, they knew, without a doubt, that she had lost the argument. The woman's mouth opened, then closed. No words came. The crowd watched, waiting, but the argument was already over. Slowly, her shoulders dropped, the fire in her eyes replaced by something else. Realization, maybe even shame. She glanced around, as if searching for support, but no one spoke. The man didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He had said what needed to be said. With a small nod, he turned, ready to walk away. But before he could, the older man in the crowd stepped forward. "It's time we stop dividing ourselves," he said, his voice carrying wisdom. "We all belong here." The tension eased. The energy shifted. Some people clapped. Others simply nodded in quiet agreement. The woman, still standing there, lowered her gaze. The man didn't wait for an apology. He didn't need one. Instead, he walked away, his presence leaving something behind, something bigger than words. A lesson, a truth no one could ignore.